when you're translating a text, it's a different part of your brain in the sense that I wasn't learning as I was translating. I think that the learning came from reading the material over and over, but it's almost you shift into this different part of your brain where you're just trying to transform words and one language into the other. And it's I don't know that it enters my brain in the same way. And, people have said before, it's like, oh, you've translated these books. You must have all that information in your head. It's like, well, no, not really. I kind of have to read it after the fact, like everybody else.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Cheological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. Use it in the best of health. My grandmother used to say this to us as children. We thought it was funny. Not funny as in ha-ha, but funny as in quirky. It was that thing Grandma said when she gave us a gift, and we were in the midst of thanking her. She didn't say, "You're welcome." She said, "Enjoy it in the best of health." Truth be told, my brother and I laughed at that. We even would tease each other with, "Use it in the best of health, honey," when something good came our way. As a child, it was hard to imagine not having health. Even though I was a bit of a sickly kid and always getting some kind of respiratory bug, still, there's a vitality, a bubbling wellspring when you're young. Still, even as a child, it's possible to sense the unspoken hush that there is such a thing as serious illness. The kind you don't speak aloud, least you open a door to disaster, create an opening to the unspeakable. Enjoy it in the best of health. I now see it was a blessing, that there would be joy and the capacity to have it fully express, that there would be opportunities for delight, connection, and circumstances that would allow for life to blossom, that we'd have an opportunity to unfold and grow into our capacity. I was born only 12 years after the end of World War II and incapable of understanding the troubles that my grandmother had lived through, even though she tried not to show us. So my grandma would remind us to enjoy in the best of health. I think maybe it was more than a blessing. It was a spell of protection, a way to have her influence seep into us for those moments when she was not there. And we'd wander our way into the kinds of trouble the world makes so enticing, or found ourselves on a distant shore because, like her parents, we had to leave the place that we considered home. Maybe it was something the grandmother from the old country that she never met would have said to her. Or perhaps it was just another way to say, "I love you," without making a child feel all squirmy with the unbearable sweetness of knowing that they're cherished. Enjoy in the best of health. I think she meant take it all in. Allow for the fullness of joy. You're going to need it for when times are lean. Practicing medicine is an invitation to take it all in, to consider how your patient's symptoms, circumstances, and choices all weave together into a connective pattern. It means using all of your senses and your knowledge, intellect, and experience as well. It might, like the guest of this conversation, mean you've wandered yourself into China and deep enough into the Chinese language that you can become friends with doctors who cared enough to write down their thoughts, perspective, and essence of something that they have gleaned from practice. You might be familiar with Eran Even, who is one of the co-translators of Dr. Huang's A Manual of Classic Formulas for Primary Care. He did his PhD work with Dr. Huang, and when you spend that much time studying the classical formulas of the Shang Han Lun, you can't avoid being exposed to the brilliance of the modern master from the last century, Dr. Liu Du-Zhou. Liu's work is foundational to anybody studying the Shang Han Lun. Eran, he recently released a translation of Essential Points on Clinical Patterns in the Shang Han Lun, which is the first in a series that he's working on. I always enjoy spilling some tea with Eran over anything Chinese medicine. Let's have a visit with him here in the Digital Tea House. Geological Conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. You have clinic challenges, our sponsors have solutions. Cupping reimagined, and I'm not sure why somebody didn't do this sooner. Fascia Buddy from our friends at AccuFast is going to change your practice. Blue Poppy offers same-day fulfillment and free shipping on orders over $50. Looking to reimagine clinical practice? Consider the study of nature's design with Ed Neal at the Apricot Grove. Later in the show, Jane makes clinic life easier with templates. Need to send a custom formula to a patient? Sunten makes it easy for you with their direct delivery service. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Cheological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast.
Hello, fellow change agents. This is John Stan, creator of the Fascia Buddy Square Cupping System, which I am very happy to say is now available in Canada and launching mid-July at your favorite US distributor. This innovative, multi-sized square cupping set is opening up fresh treatment possibilities everywhere. One great example is in the use of our smallest cups. They fit perfectly just under the occipital ridge when you add a bit of cream to mat down the hair. Now you can precisely target gallbladder 20 and UB10 to create powerful decompression in this very tricky zone. You can stop there or add more cups along the bladder or gallbladder line for even deeper tissue engagement. Have your patient gently move their neck for a few minutes, then pop the cups off and watch their face light up as mobility increases and tension is way down. Often, it's a dramatic change and super quick. And that's just one use. I'm sure you'll have endless others in your clinic. Visit fasciabuddy.com to learn more and get your set now.
When it comes to running a smooth, efficient clinic, having a reliable supplier makes all the difference. That's where Blue Poppy comes in. From premium acupuncture needles and trusted herbal formulas to innovative solutions like their liquid moxa, a smokeless, low-fume alternative to traditional moxa, Blue Poppy has everything you need all in one place. And the best part, Blue Poppy offers free shipping on all orders over $50 with no restriction in the continental United States. For nearly 40 years, Blue Poppy has supported licensed acupuncturists with high-quality products and a commitment to exceptional service. Visit bluepoppy.com today and discover why so many practitioners trust Blue Poppy. Don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more. Are you ready to create your practice through an in-depth study of the original writings of Chinese medicine? Beginning August 24th, join the Apricot Grove and Dr. Edward Neal on a transformative journey into the roots of Chinese medicine. If you are new to the classics, their Wisdom of the Cosmos class offers a wonderful introduction to the original writings of Chinese medicine and Neijing, nature-based medicine. For those seeking a deeper immersion, their highly esteemed 2-year postgraduate training in Neijing, nature-based medicine, and classical text archaeology provides a comprehensive pathway to advanced clinical practice grounded in the Neijing text. Come and join a vibrant global community reimagining clinical practice through the traditional writings of the Huangdi Neijing and study of nature's design. Tuition assistance is available. Visit neijingstudies.com to learn more and enroll today. Eran Even, welcome back to Geological.
Michael Max, thank you for having me. Such an honor and a pleasure to be here again with you.
Oh, it's always fun to hang out with you. You know, we get together and we...
Yeah, it really is.
Just gossip about Chinese medicine.
I know, it's the best.
We're such geeks.
We are such
How
geeks.
did we become such geeks?
I know.
What the hell happened to us?
I don't know, man. We found something we really love to do and talk about and, be engaged in. And so I think it's a beautiful thing. I love being a Chinese medicine nerd. I think it's awesome.
It is awesome. And it helps people.
Yeah, exactly. Bottom line.
Bottom line, it helps people and it's fun. So I'm super excited. I have to stop saying this. I'm super excited to talk to you today. I'm excited to talk to everybody. I can't believe people actually take time out of their day to talk to me about all the weird, wonderful stuff they do with medicine. Our Chinese medicine is so broad and deep. And yeah, if you're geeky at all, man, you can go deep. You should probably take a life jacket.
Yeah, Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, and that's the beautiful thing. I think I've said this hundreds of times before, several times on this podcast. Is that's what the best thing about this medicine is that the learning never ends, the journey never ends. Right? We don't get it in this lifetime. We struggle to understand. So we get something, but we struggle to learn. Yeah, it's amazing. It's such a fun journey.
Well, we get something. We get something. Yeah. So struggle. Struggle is an interesting word. And I get it. I've been there. I think about it. I don't know. Recently, somehow I got the idea in my head. I don't know where it came from. But the idea in my head said the hard stuff is where it gets interesting.
Right.
I mean, I've had a lot of experience in my life of trying to avoid the hard stuff because, it's hard. And you don't get it the first time, and you bang your head against it, and maybe a lot. But it's where the really interesting stuff is. And I'm delighted to have you here because we're going to talk about this book that you've just translated. All right, talking about hard stuff.
Yeah, speaking of hard stuff, yeah.
Translate something from Chinese to English when you're not a native Chinese speaker. And something like herbal medicine, Shang Han Lun in particular. All right, that's a not so easy topic. You chose to do a book by Dr. Liu Du-Zhou. And I don't know how many people are familiar with Liu Du-Zhou because he's like a master of the last century. It's like you can know who Bob Dylan is, right? Oh, I know Bob Dylan. Yeah, great music. But do you know Robert Johnson? Do you know Ramblin' Jack Elliott? Do you know Hank Williams? Do you know the people that Bob Dylan was listening to? You know what I mean? You studied a lot with Dr. Huang. I think a lot of people know about him. Dr. Zhou, tell us about this cat.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I think you're absolutely correct. In the West, I don't know how, Liu Du-Zhou's name is not very huge, but in China, I mean, he's a legend. There's a Chinese saying where they say, 北柳南陈 when they're talking about Shang Han Lun scholars. So they're talking about Liu Du-Zhou in the north, and they're talking about Qian Yiren in the south, who was actually from Nanjing, where Dr. Huang is based. So, I mean, in China, Liu Du-Zhou is a fixture in terms of Shang Han Lun scholarship and studies. And, even some of his books, because he wrote well over 50, close to 20 books and hundreds of articles as well. And some of those articles are written for lay people. And so there's a lot of interest in the medicine as well by people who are not practitioners. And, most people in China would know Liu Du-Zhou. In the West here, there has not been a lot of publications on Liu Du-Zhou. This might be the first full textbook of his, translated into English. Stephen Clavey, the late great Stephen Clavey, who I actually dedicated part of this book to, came out with a small little book on Liu Du-Zhou's work that is available on ebook.
Yes, he did that right toward the end of his life, and it's fabulous.
It's brilliant. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. And that would probably be the first exposure of Liu's work to the West. Stephen also, throughout the years of running The Lantern, also published a few articles on Liu Du-Zhou. And I think probably his most popular one is the one he wrote on Qi transformation. And so I really think we owe Stephen a lot of love and respect in terms of his showing the West the potential of Liu's work. So I'm so honored to be able to release a book of Liu's work, and this book especially is, I fell in love with this book many, many years ago. I think it's a similar story to your Shi Da Lei Fang, to your Huang text, in the sense that you got this little book and you were like, I should translate this book. Or we come up with these insane ideas to...
Yes. Hey, this is cool. What if I do this?
To let me make my life a little bit harder. And, so well over 15 years ago, I stumbled upon this book, read it. In Chinese, it's only about 100 pages, right? So it's not by Chinese text definition. It's a pretty small little book, right? So I found this book, fell in love with it, and knew that at some point.
How did you find it?
Randomly at a bookstore. I was already familiar with Liu Du-Zhou's work. So when I was living in Beijing 20 plus years ago, I met a professor, Fu Yanling. And Fu Yanling happens to be one of Liu Du-Zhou's few, living disciples that are still practicing And he is the heir of Liu Du-Zhou's legacy, and he is the officially recognized holder of the Liu Du-Zhou lineage. And I was lucky enough to meet him many years ago, and I was actually very lucky to have him write a little foreword for this book that just came out as well. So I was already familiar with Liu's work. And I had some teachers in China who, may have worked with him at some point. Because, Liu died in 2001. So, it's a long time ago, but it wasn't that long ago. And I was only in...
No, that's not that long ago.
It's really not. He's a modern day physician, right? And...
Yes, but think about the times that he lived through.
He was born in 1917. So he lived through some tumultuous periods of Chinese history.
We think we're going through something tumultuous, and I'm not trying to make light of it.
Absolutely.
But, oh my goodness, end of the Qing dynasty, Republican era, communism. They even tried to get rid of Chinese medicine when Liu was a younger man.
That's right. And he would have been, about 49, I guess, or so, when the Cultural Revolution started. So, he was already deep in his career. So, he was trained pre-Cultural Revolution, right? So he was in this kind of in the pre-Mao days, right? So where there was more of an emphasis on classical education and stuff. But, the experiences he must have had really would have shaped who he was, right, later on. So, but anyways, he died in 2001. So I was only there a couple of years after that. So there were a lot of teachers and a lot of professors that had the opportunity of working with Liu, because Liu worked at Dongzhimen Hospital, right? So, the hospital is connected to the Beijing University of Chinese Medicine there, right? And he was a contemporary of Hu Xishu. And, he used to write these stories about how he would send all of his complex patients to Hu Xishu, which is interesting to me because most people would send Liu their complex patients. So I can only imagine the kind of patients he was sending to Hu Xishu, right?
But let's just stop for a moment and think about that, because that, it's funny in one regard. But if you've got a thing that you do and you know what you do, and you've got a sort of fun way, you've got like a scope that you're good at, you can handle what's in it. But stuff that falls outside of your scope, you need someone who's different than what you do. You can't send someone to someone who's like you. You can't send a patient that you don't know what to do with to someone like you, because you can handle it if otherwise.
Exactly.
You need to send them to someone who's thinking in a whole different way.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Which is so interesting, right? Which also shows the how varied this field is, because, both would be considered to practice a form of Jingfang, but their methodology and their approach to the medicine and the roads that they're going to take to get to where they need to be are going to be very, very different. So it's always interesting to me, right? But that's the diversity is what makes it so beautiful too, right? In this medicine, and having the opportunity to refer to patients or to other practitioners who are going to see things in a different light is actually sometimes what we need in our own practices too, right?
For sure.
We can't help everybody.
So I didn't realize that he had died just at the beginning of this century. Sometimes I think about the old docs and it's like, oh yeah, they've been long dead, but
yeah,
actually not so much in his case. As you found this book, and it is fun being in Asia with all the bookstores, and you can just kind of browse around and like, I wonder what this is. And they're small books, right? They're concise and they don't cost much money, so you can pick stuff up and read it over the years. What was it in this book in particular? Because I'm sure you got plenty of them. But what was it in this one in particular that had you thinking, oh man, I want to put this in English. I want to share this with my friends?
It was the way the book was laid out. So, the fact that it wasn't filled with a ton of superfluous information. It wasn't just a book where he was just trying to lay down everything he knew. It was 3 simple chapters. The first chapter is, getting to know the Shang Han Lun, and where he talks about, the history of the text and how to read the text and the importance of the text, and where he goes down into his view of the 6 confirmations and channel theory, and then goes into a mind-blowingly beautiful discussion about qi transformation, where he talks about how people ignore this, but in his opinion, it's one of the most important facets of understanding the Shang Han Lun, right? So, and then the second chapter, and then he does this beautiful job in the first chapter about talking about the Tigang, like the outline of each of the confirmations and what are the important aspects and keys. These are the essential points, from where the title comes from, about the 6 confirmations and how to understand them. And then for me, it was the second chapter that really blew my mind, because the second chapter is devoted purely to water It's just about water qi. It's just about water.
It's just about water. That sounds very Clavey-ish.
It's literally about water. Yes, exactly.
Doesn't it?
It does, very much so. And so it's all about water and its prevalence in the modern clinic. Essentially, he talks about water qi, he talks about water upsurging, he talks about its diagnosis, presentation, the treatments, water counterflow, water thirst, dizziness, various other things, which at least in my practice here, this may not be relevant to everybody, but for myself practicing in the Pacific Northwest, it's very relevant here, right? I see a lot of water pathologies, and this book really changed the game for me. And, everybody has their formulas. And when you read these old docs, there's, docs that really use specific formulas extensively in their practice. And without a doubt, for Liu Du-Zhou, it was Lingui Zhuganhtang. And the amount of discussion in this text about Lingui Zhuganhtang is absolutely phenomenal. And, talking about the modifications and the use of it. And, he goes on to talk about a formula called Ling Shao Zhuganhtang, which doesn't actually exist, but essentially it's just Lingui Zhuganhtang minus Guizi plus Bai Shao. But, he says that it's essentially an offshoot of the formula Guizi Chu Gui Jia Fu Ling Bai Zhutang from line 28 of the Shang Han Lun. He just doesn't call it that. He calls it Ling Shao Zhuganhtang. So, he really takes this formula and breaks it down to its finest particle. And it really is very eye-opening in that sense. So, I think by just reading this second chapter, I think that a lot of practitioners, and I've seen this a lot with a lot of my students as well, is that they start to realize how many water pathologies they're missing in clinic, and based on some of the outlines he describes, and then in chapter 3, it's just about fire. So the same idea, it doesn't go into as much detail as the water chapter, but it's just about fire. So 3 simple but very complex and, with a ton of information chapters in this book. So, and it wasn't scary in the sense of, when I first saw it, it was like, I can't translate. This is 800 pages in Chinese, right? 100 pages, right? It wasn't crazy. It was a lot of work, don't get me wrong. But this idea of like, okay, well, this little book is small, and mighty. It's this little tiny book that has so much power in it. Similar to some of Huang's books, right? That are tiny little books, but the information that's held inside is just transformative and powerful.
It is.
And that's how I felt about this book.
And it's longer in English.
Yeah, my book here came out to be just over 300 pages, so that's what happens.
Yeah, way longer in English. It's deceptive. You get a thin little book in Chinese, and it's concise. And because it's Chinese, and Chinese is kind of a concise language, right? It's like, how do you say it? It's like taking a computer file, you can compress it.
Yeah.
Right? Chinese is very compressed. You take it and open it into English, and it gets longer.
Yeah.
Right? There's a conciseness.
We're too complicated with our words, right? The Chinese have this really succinct way of saying things in just a couple characters that can mean so much in English.
I don't know. Maybe just the way the mind works in different languages.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But like small books can be deceptively simple.
Absolutely.
And then you get into it. I want to come back. First of all, I just want to comment fire and water.
Yeah.
If there is a very fundamental aspect to being human beings, right? We always like to look at the 5 phases, the Wuxing, and talk about that stuff.
Right.
But fire and water, man, how many rock and roll songs have been written about that? How many things in life come down to fire and water? So there's something very essential,
right?
I'm going to say about those processes. It's like the alpha and omega of the homeostatic process, fire, water.
And yeah, some would say that that's really all that matters, right? Depending on who you ask. That's fundamentally yin and yang, right? That's the most basic fundamental aspect of this medicine. But, so to devote entire chapters to just these subjects is pretty profound, right? And so, and Liu in the text refers to the Neijing very, very often and quotes the Neijing numerous times in the text and discusses a lot of discusses the 19 pathologies, pathogeneses from the Huangdi Neijing, and mentions how the majority of them are actually related to fire as well, right? So, and I think it's important because I think that there's been a lot of emphasis taken away from fire treatments, that there's this real strong emphasis on cold. And I think that also part of that comes with this misunderstanding of what cold damage truly means, and that it encompasses far more than just cold damage, literally. It's also talking about fire and dampness and water and all of these other aspects too, right? So, so to have these chapters devoted to these fundamental elements, it just kind of blew my mind. I mean, I knew this book had to be transformed into another language. And it also came out larger because in true, I try to adhere to as much of a scholarly perspective as possible. There's a lot of footnotes as well, because I felt like a lot of concepts and theories had to be explained, and I didn't want the reader to not know who certain writers were, because Dr. Liu will just mention a random quote or whatnot from a historical writer, but I felt that it was important for the reader who may not be familiar with who these people are to understand how important they were to the development of the medicine and why these people were quoted so often in the text.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, my favorite clinic management software that's here to make practice life a little easier. For many of us practitioners, documentation can feel a bit clunky and disrupt the flow of an appointment. That's where Jane's templates can help. With dozens of customization options, you can tailor your templates to your workflow so you can focus your energy on what matters, which is helping your patients. Instead of starting from scratch, Jane includes access to an extensive template library built by practitioners across different disciplines. You can simply edit any template to fit your unique needs, or create your own templates for every step of patient care, including intake forms, questionnaires, clinical surveys, and treatment plans. This way, you have everything you need to start your appointments prepared. Learn more about how Jane can help your documentation work for you. Head to meet.jane.app/documentation to book a demo. Oh, one last thing. If you're ready to get started with Jane, use the code CHEOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. I appreciate that. There's a lot that you get anytime you're involved in any culture, right? You pick up the idioms, the stories, right? You're immersed in it. So you don't think about how like one little reference, a little one-off, could have great meaning for you and like zero meaning for someone who's outside of that context. Great that you put all that in there. I look forward to it. I want to come back to some of the material from the first chapter. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier Steve Clavey talking about this, the chi transformation article that he did in The Lantern. I remember some years ago, I was talking with him about, this is when I was first beginning to learn about Sa'am acupuncture and first beginning to cotton to the weird way that it puts the organ systems together, because it doesn't do the usual like lung and large intestine, just like lung and stomach.
Right.
And that was very confusing in the beginning. And then as I started to see how these were talking about proper physiological function and how they counterbalance each other, it began to make more sense. And Clavey sent me, I remember talking with him about it. He said, and I remember him sending me that article and saying, you might find something here from Dr. Liu that you will find helpful. I think it might help illuminate some of these things that you're studying with the Sa'am acupuncture. And I got to tell you, my friend, I have probably read that article over a dozen times because there's so much in it and there's pieces that make a lot of sense and I can kind of digest it. And there's other stuff that doesn't. And I just need more experience and more looking at it and trying things before I start to see how those different relationships function.
Right.
So I'd love to hear from you, your sense of the chi transformation, how the Tai Yang and the Xiao Yin with each other, how the Yang Ming and the Tai Yin have a relationship, and your sense of it and how you're using it in your practice. And I know this is a long-winded question, but things that people might be able to think about that they haven't thought about that will help them to get a glimpse of something in clinic that they might not have seen before, so they don't have to refer their patients to Hu Shi Shu.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge question, but I think it's an important question. And I think that this is a really important section of the text as well, because Dr. Liu does a great job at explaining this, because it encompasses both a pathological and physiological component there. So by understanding qi transformation, and in his idea of qi transformation, and he quotes Huangdi Neijing chapter 5, Huangdi Neijing chapter 68, but primarily he's talking about what is also discussed in Su Wen 74, which is this Biao Ben Zhong theory, this branch, root, and center theory, right? And so for him, this is the essence of tree transformation, right? And so,
yes.
when we talk about this, we understand how a conformation is going to both manifest and how a conformation is going to, from where that conformation is going to manifest, and also from essentially what keeps that conformation physiologically sound, right? So, we have things like the Taiyang, for example, where its root is cold, right? I mean, Taiyang is the conformation of cold water, so its root is cold, and its branch is yang. It is a yang conformation, right? So, and its center is Shaoyin. And so what that means is that it's the center, the zhong aspect of it, that keeps that conformation physiologically sound. So without Shaoyin imperial fire, the cold water becomes way too cold. So we need fire to keep that water, essentially that cold water, from growing far too much. So that is the center of the conformation, is what keeps it physiologically sound and allows it to function and move in its proper course. This like idea of shun versus ni, right? So this idea of proper course. And the Neijing says that the Taiyang, for example, will transform from both its root and from its branch. So what that means is that when a Taiyang shows disease, it's going to show disease from its root being cold. So it's going to show patterns of cold in various forms, and it's from its branch. And from its branch is yang. So things that are also going to be yang nature, right? So the Neijing says that when the root and the branch are of different qi, then that conformation will manifest from both its root and its branch. And I hope this is making sense. I mean, we don't have to go into every single conformation, because this will turn into a qi transformation class. But I think that what I really want to emphasize is that with the root and the branch, it is talking inherently about the fundamental nature of each of the conformations, and the center is essentially talking about what's going to keep it physiologically sound. So a perfect example is Taiyin, for example. Taiyin, the root of it is dampness. So we associate Taiyin with dampness, and the branch of it is yin, right? So because the two qis are the same, the Neijing says that this conformation will just transform from its root. So what that means is that when we see Taiyin pathologies, we're going to see damp pathologies. I mean, it's pretty clear. It's a damp pathology because it transforms from its root. Now, its center, its zhong, is yang ming. So what that means is that the dry heat of yang ming will ensure that the damp Taiyin stays in check. So you always have to have a certain aspect, a certain amount of yang ming heat in order to keep Taiyin from becoming far too wet and far too damp. And then that will turn into pathology, right? So, and so on and so forth. And I mean, if the listener goes in and looks at each of these aspects, and I mean, referring to Huangdi Neijing 74 as well is going to really, really help, because it's all laid out there very, very clearly, right? So, and then we can take that further and we can understand, okay, well, what does that mean? And when we treat a Taiyang root pathology, what are the herbs we're going to use? And we're going to look at things like Guizi, we're going to look at things like Ma Huang, we're going to look at so many aspects of it. If we're looking at a root problem of it, for example, as well, which could be manifesting as a water pathology as well, within Taiyang, cold water, we're looking at potentially Fuling formulas, Fuzi formulas, and so on and so forth, right? So I really do think that this theory is very, very important in terms of understanding the six conformations, in terms of understanding how to use the Shang Han Lun and how to use the formulas found within. And Liu does a beautiful job in chapter 1, really breaking that stuff down. Really profound.
In chapter 1, you said that he also talks about how to read and think about and use the Shang Han Lun.
Right.
What are his thoughts on that?
A major part of chapter 1 is also talking about the history of the text and talking about where it comes from, how it was divided, where it really came from, how we understand certain sections, certain copies of it now, and he talks about the Song dynasty and how it was essentially, when printing started to become widespread, how the Shang Han Lun was essentially put together and recreated. And he talks about the various copies there. He talks about understanding the fundamental theories that underlie the Shang Han Lun and underlie the six conformations, and why it's important to understand that. And, aside from the history, I mean, he goes, there's a section called Tracing the Origins of the Shang Han Lun, and that's where he really goes pretty deep into the origin story of the Shang Han Lun. He gives various literary examples of the Shang Han Lun and goes into that as well. And I shouldn't say literary example, I should say literary techniques, essentially, and how the Shang Han Lun was written. And he uses these examples of this kind of guest host borrowing, this reversal of emptiness and fullness. I mean, it's really complicated language in the sense of when you hear that, it sounds a little bit crazy, but when you actually read it, he's really making a lot of sense, because he's analyzing the style in which Zhang Zhong-Jing wrote the text and why it's important to understand the style, Zhang Zhong-Jing's literary style, in order to understand why he said some of the things he said, and to get a little bit deeper into that aspect there. And that helps kind of elucidate the text a little bit more. So he talks a little bit about that. He talks about the title of the Shang Han Lun, the significance of the title, why it's called the Shang Han Lun, and then he goes into the six conformations. And this is where he starts his very deep dive into the six conformations and channel theory as well. He really emphasized that it's important for people to understand channel theory, so he doesn't separate the idea of channels from the Shang Han Lun, where, and he's not talking about acupuncture per se, he's just talking about understanding channel theory and the importance of really being very clear in understanding the movement of the channels, where the channels move, the parts of the body that the channels will reach, and so on and so forth. It's a really important aspect for him. He talks about the Ben Biao Dong, so the qi transformation aspect. And then he goes into also the Ba Gang, the 8 guiding principles he basically correlates the six conformations with the Ba Gang, which actually starts to step into the realm of the Husi Shu type of school, right? Because that school really emphasized using the Ba Gang, the 8 guiding principles, 8 methods. I'm not even sure I translated it as the 8 guiding principles. I'm sure there's multiple ways to translate that.
But I think people know what you're talking about.
Okay, good.
And I think the Ba Gang, the 8 principles, it's kind of gotten a bad rap in a way.
I think so.
In our modern world, because it's often associated with TCM, and TCM is kind of like, oh yeah, that communist blah, blah, blah. It's not real medicine. It's not classic medicine. It's this modern sort of mixed together thing. It's this modern remix. And yet here you're talking about Dr. Husi Shu looking at it and going way back into the Shang Han Lun and saying these principles are embedded in what Zhang Zhong-Jing is talking about.
And Liu really emphasizes that. And I mean, it's so interesting to me that this polarization of TCM and classical medicine, I mean, the Ba Gang is just yin yang. It's just exterior, interior, cold and heat, deficiency and excess. I mean, I know those are terms thrown around in TCM, but I mean, those are also the fundamental principles of practicing Chinese medicine as a whole. It doesn't matter which lineage you're a part of or in what time period you lived in. I mean, these are the fundamental principles of this entire medicine. I think that if you don't understand yin and yang, you can't practice this medicine. And I mean, even if we look at the certain Kampo schools, the schools of Todo Yoshimasu and stuff, they rejected a lot of theory in Chinese medicine. They were hands-on battlefield professors, physicians, but Todo also had a quote, which I'm obviously paraphrasing here, but something along the lines of, if you don't understand yin and yang, you don't understand medicine, right? So I mean, we can't separate whatever school you belong to, or whatever camp you belong to. And I mean, I definitely practice a very classical form of medicine, and I am trained in Jingfang, classical methods or classical formulas. But I can also respect how this medicine evolved and understand that regardless of, even if these theories are discussed a lot in TCM or on state board exams or whatnot, they're still the fundamental principles of the medicine, and we have to understand them. We cannot separate ourselves from them.
There's a reason why they've come down to us at this point in time. There's a reason why they're considered the fundamentals.
Exactly.
And I remember a teacher when I was in school saying something to the effect of, well, it all comes down to yin and yang. And I can remember thinking back then, well, I'm kind of screwed because I've had this kind of poetic understanding of yin and yang, not even understanding, just poetic flight of fancy about yin and yang, because what do you know about it if you haven't really dug into it? And I have to tell you, years later, we talk about yin and yang, and I still have more question marks than answers around that, because this is the initial splitting of unity into two different complementary poles. Seems to me, actually, that it's not so much that they're out to support each other, they're out to destroy each other. You know, you look at any kind, this is how we get yin-yang polarity flips, because something goes so far in a particular direction, it actually turns into its opposite. I can remember years ago thinking, how the hell does that happen? How does intense cold turn into heat? And I just could not wrap my mind around it. I think there's a lot to looking at yin and yang, and it's the other aspects of the Bagong that help me to get a handle on. Is it hot? Is it hot or is it cold? Is it dry or is it wet? Does it move or is it stagnant? There's different ways of, I'm going to say, breaking it down that my small human mind can begin to get a handle on it. Because I think yin-yang by itself, I mean, maybe Taoist masters can grasp that. I have a lot of trouble with it. I really do. And I still do.
Yeah, of course. You know, and as, you know, just going back to what you just said about, not just about yin and yang, but just about the Bagong in general, is that as practitioners, I mean, isn't that fundamentally what we are trying to do anyways? Whether or not we use that terminology or that language, I mean, we still want to know, is your problem an exterior problem, an interior problem? Is it a yang conformation? Is it a yin conformation? Is it a cold pathology? Is it a hot pathology? Where is the nature of your pathology? And we're using Bagong whether we like it or not. You can reject it all you want. You know, whoever's out there rejecting this idea, saying I'm a purist and I don't do that kind of style, but it's impossible. And once you unravel those 6 guiding principles, it's going to tell us whether you are it's a yin pathology or a yang pathology. And I mean, at the end of the day, you can never be one or the other. You're always going to have elements of one or the other. And I mean, in the Shang Han Lun, in classical ideas, when you have yin-yang separation, essentially we die. I mean, that is essentially death, right? So we never want to be in a situation where we are purely yin or purely yang.
Move a little closer to your microphone. Yeah.
And so, you know, it's funny when sometimes you have these patients that ask you, you know, it's like, well, am I yin or am I yang? You know, it's like, well,
yeah. Yes.
You're a beautiful combination of the two. You have maybe some predominance in one, but we want to achieve a state of balance, homeostasis, whatever term we want to use, where you are you are made up of both elements.
This is where I think his ideas on chi transformation really hold water, no pun intended. Because it's one thing to look at these different elements by themselves, but in looking at how they transform into each other and how they're connected to each other and where the imbalances come from and how you bring homeostasis back through chi transformation, that, it seems to me, is where things really get enlivened. Because there are these natural, I'm going to say proper physiological processes in our body. Sometimes they get out of whack, where something becomes weakened and so it can't do its job. And the trick, if there is a trick, is to bring that out so it's doing what it's supposed to do. System will take care of itself.
That's right. Yeah. Physiological regulation. This is what we want to do.
Physiological regulation.
If you don't mind, I want to just read a very small, tiny passage here, which I think one of the things I think you're going to appreciate about this book is Liu's poetic style. He was a poet and he didn't even know it. Or maybe he did know it. I don't really know. But he wrote in this beautiful poetic style, you know, he was a traditionalist, right? And he wrote in this beautiful style. And so, you know, that's one of the challenges of translating that kind of material as well, is to try to maintain that kind of poetic prose as well. But just in terms of the chi transformation, I mean, he goes on to discuss a lot about here, but he you know, this is what he writes about about the qi transformation. He says, as a result, the theory of qi transformation was discovered and adapted by cold damage scholars to explain the principles behind the 6 conformations and 6 qi, showing how these concepts reflect the physiological and pathological characteristics of diseases, which ultimately guided clinical practice. This approach connected the internal workings of the body with the cosmological theories of yin, yang, and qi, offering insight into disease mechanisms. I mean, I think that's just beautiful, right? Straight up.
Wow.
Straight up, right? So it's, what a perfect way to say that. And so, and I mean, I hope that a lot of listeners will read that passage as well, but, it's sandwiched by several Huangdi Neijing quotes, right? So, one of the things about Liu was that, he provided this material, but he also provided the context around which the material was built. That he says in the book numerous times, he says, I don't know much and I'm still learning. And I mean, he wrote this book when he was in his late 70s, like near his passing, right? And he refers to himself often as this like humble doctor who doesn't know much and hopes to keep learning. And so I think it was important for him to provide the scholarly kind of background from where he got his theories. So he wouldn't get accused by his contemporaries as making stuff up, right?
This is one of those sort of sticky wickets.
Mm-hmm.
Are you making stuff up? To some degree we are. If we see something and maybe other people haven't quite seen it, and we're using it in clinic and it seems to be reliable, it's like, oh, here's an angle that I think I see. Let me share this. And here's what it's rooted in. And here's how I'm using it.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the effects that I'm getting. I think part of what we do is I don't know if it's that we make stuff up. It's that we refine our experience in a way that maybe gives another point of view. I think it's partly our job to add something. It's partly our job to understand it. It's partly our job to help people. It's partly our job to add something in some way, maybe help clarify or, all of us, I think, everyone's got their favorite formulas. Everyone's got their favorite points, right? Because you get a relationship with certain things. You get a kind of a chow, you get a knack,
mm-hmm.
right? There's the method and then there's the knack.
Right.
And sharing that knack, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
So there's that. I'm curious to know, in translating this book, what you've gotten out of it that's had you working differently in clinic.
One of the things that I can say right away is my view of water. I mean, I was already treating a lot of water, but that water chapter literally changed the game for me. And for the longest time when I was deep into that chapter, translating that chapter, I was just looking for water pathologies. I was trying to justify every patient that came in through my door. I mean, not really, but kind of, I was just like, how can I make a case for Lingui Zhugantang here? And several of my students can attest to that too, because I was doing a bunch of teaching clinics over those weekends, and jokingly, I would say, we're just going to be using Lingui Zhugantang this weekend, so just get ready. But I was looking for it. I was really, really looking for it. And obviously, in this medicine, kind of going back to what you were saying, I mean, we can probably make a case for most things, I could probably justify the use of a formula and trick my brain into believing that it's the right formula to choose. And then if the results don't work out, then it's like, oh, shoot, I was really wrong. But if they do, it's like, ooh, I convinced myself correctly there. But not really, though. I mean, I wasn't just using it indiscriminately, but it was working on that chapter that really shifted my, I don't want to say practice, but it really shifted my mindset in terms of something I knew already, but really reinforced in terms of how prevalent water pathologies are in at least my part of the world over here, and at least in a lot of the clinics that I've been working at and teaching at as well. So that was, I think that was transformative for me. And the first chapter for me, I don't think it's necessarily a learning experience. I think it was more of, to me, it's almost like reading poetry and reading this beautiful prose in terms of how he talks about these books. And I think it for myself, as much as I already as much as I love this aspect of the medicine, and as much as I, have devoted my life to understanding Han Dynasty texts and medicine, it really just deepened my love affair for these texts when you see it in a different light, written by somebody who I respect so greatly, right? So yeah, but I mean, on the flip side of that, and I'm sure you know this very well, is that when you're translating a text, it's a different part of your brain in the sense that I wasn't learning as I was translating. I think that the learning came from reading the material over and over, but it's almost you shift into this different part of your brain where you're just trying to transform words and one language into the other. And it's I don't know that it enters my brain in the same way. And, people have said before, it's like, oh, you've translated these books, you must have all that information in your head. It's like, well, no, not really. I kind of have to read it after the fact, like everybody else, and fill in the gaps, because translating is a different process. It's an art form as well, but it's completely different in the sense that you're not retaining the same way that you would as if you were sitting down in a quiet space, in a quiet room, really reading the text and absorbing it.
Sun Ten has been a trusted name in traditional Chinese medicine since 1946. With deep roots in classical herbal wisdom, Sun Ten combines time-honored practices with modern science to support health and wellness. Their extensive line of herbal extracts and supplements is manufactured to the highest quality standards, helping practitioners deliver consistent, reliable results. Through the Sun Ten dispensary platform, licensed healthcare professionals can easily create and customize herbal formulas online. These prescriptions are hand-prepared and shipped directly to patients, making personalized TCM care more accessible than ever. Their commitment extends beyond products. They actively support integrative care by enabling clinicians to offer customized herbal solutions that seamlessly fit into modern treatment plans. With nearly 80 years of experience, Sun Ten remains a pioneer in bridging traditional knowledge with today's healthcare needs. To learn more, visit sun10.com or sun10dispensary.com. I think there's that, and I think its opposite is also true. Okay, I get it. There's, in doing Huang's book, I would think I would have known the material better when I got done than I did.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course.
So there's that. On the other hand, there's something about the material that I got that would not have been possible to get from just reading it. Something about going through that process of translation does something to you. So it in some ways, it's the difference. Okay, now we have AI. That's even more different than Google.
Right, it's a different world, yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that's amazing about AI, it'll do a pretty bang-up job of a first translation in like minutes. I've looked at some things and played around with it a little bit. And it, on one hand, it's amazing and slightly frightening to realize that it's possible to take a PDF of Shidai Fang, drop it into Chat GPT, and have Chat GPT do in probably under 10 minutes what took me a year and a half.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Of like getting from English into a Chinglish and then from the Chinglish into publishable English. Okay.
Scary.
Now, yes and no. Okay. So scary. Wow. It's amazing that it can do that. There's some computing power, but I think how do I say this? It's like when I was first learning Chinese, I was schlepping around a big old book that was a dictionary. And then Pleco came along on the Palm Pilot.
Yes.
Shortly after I landed in Taiwan, and I could download Pleco to a Palm Pilot, and instead of carrying around a pretty good size heavy book with me every day so I could look up words, it was in the palm of my hand and I could just write the character. Now, that made learning Chinese a lot easier, but I don't know if it helped me in other ways. I think about people that didn't have that and they were learning Chinese. Some of our teachers and friends who have done that work. And, they just looked it up in the book until it was like, I don't need to look it up because I know, I can tell you what page it's on now. It works differently in your brain. It makes you a different kind of a human.
Yeah.
And I think it's one thing to work out what something means by applying some effort than having it just spoon-fed to you.
100%. Yeah. There's articles written about this and about our brain's ability to retain information and our ability to retain information. And in the context of Chinese characters, for example, is increased dramatically when we have to work for it. I was one of those people as well. I was lugging around the book and looking every single character up, got really good at looking up characters. You and I age us a little bit here, but we started studying Chinese before the digital age, so to speak, right? Where it was all books, right? And I remember sitting in my apartment in Beijing, with 20 books surrounding me and dictionaries and losing my mind when I can't find a character because I can't figure out which radical it is, and
that's right, I can't even find the damn character.
Oh my goodness. And to be honest with you, I still do, I still read texts Chinese at night, and because in my home we don't bring phones into our bedroom, it's kind of a policy we have, so I still have a paper dictionary next to my bed and I will still look up radicals. And 2 nights ago, I was looking up a character. I couldn't find it. For some reason, I could not identify the radical. So even, almost 25 years later of studying Chinese, it still gets me, but I really think that making it a little bit hard and having to work for something is going to help us retain that information. There are some great articles about this right now because, we live, and I use Plico or Pleco all the time. I use it every single day and I love it. I would not.
It's fantastic.
Trade it for anything and be like, no, I'd rather have my dictionary and carry that around. It's like, no, Pleco is amazing. And I use it. It's probably the only translation tool that I use. I got an email recently from a friend and colleague who was asking me about the translation tools that I use, and I don't have any. I translate right on Pages, and I use Pleco occasionally to look up a character that I don't know, or to get if I forgot how Wiseman defines it or whatnot, I'll click on Pleco, right? But it is an exciting time. And just going back to the whole AI thing, I wrote a very small section in my foreword about AI and how, it's a really exciting time that we're living in, and it's giving people access to material that they would not have had access to. But it's not perfect yet. It's not perfect. And, there's definitely, a lot of nuances that you're going to lose, especially for a language like Chinese, right? And I'm sure as I say this, it's going to get better. And I'm sure by the time this podcast airs, it's going to be even better. And I know that it is transforming on a literally minute by minute situation here. But, while I still can and while I still have the abilities, my goal is to just keep translating and publishing as a human who still values the intense labor and dedication that's devoted to translation. But that's, I think that there's nothing wrong with using some AI here and there, of course. And I think as long as we understand its limitations and our own limitations, and if we're willing to put the work into correcting or digging into the potential errors that could be present as well, I think that that's important, because we also want to present we want to be as honest as we can, and we want the material to be as clean as possible. So my concern is that if people start publishing works that haven't really been dug into, where people are just like, oh, I trust it, AI is great, it's done, and I think that's where there's going to be some issues, right?
You were talking earlier about the footnotes that you've done with this book.
Yeah.
That there'll be a quote from somebody or some offhand remark.
Yeah.
That if you weren't a Chinese speaker,
right,
or you didn't have the background that you happen to have from having lived in China, you wouldn't get that quote.
Right.
And could AI do that? Maybe.
I'm sure it could. Yeah.
But okay, so let's just say it could. Let's give AI its due. I'm going to steel man this for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say AI could do it. But what does that do for you as a practitioner? How does that help you if you've offloaded the, I'm going to say, digestion of the material to AI? You've just gotten back an answer, but it's the difference between a fully nutrient powder that you put into water, shake up and drink, versus a meal that has slow cooked over 3 hours.
That's right. Yeah, or it's like planting seeds. I mean, what I wanted to say before was that I see translating the material as planting seeds as well, right? And so once I read the material again, I engage with the material again, they get watered. And it's the same thing. It's like with AI, we're just trying to grow plants without seeds. And so how strong is that foundation, right? So yeah, you really, you know, I'm a seed planter. I like to really have those seeds planted. And I think that what you said before about doing Dr. Huang's work was perfect in the sense that you understood what he was talking about on a much deeper level that you wouldn't have gotten through just reading it, because you had to dissect it. You had to strip it down and then reproduce it in a language that was readable and that made sense and was very clear. And there's no way that the human brain doesn't go through some sort of transformative experience doing that, right? So, and I think that is planting seeds. And then once we go back and read it, because I mean, it was self-published, I was one of the editors and we went through it. I read my book a dozen times. And so that's watering those seeds, right? So then that's watering the seeds. Yeah.
That's watering their seeds for sure. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking, you know, when I did Huang's book, I'd often have questions about things. Again, footnotey kinds of things. It just something in my mind I was not clear on. We had the great good gift of email at that time. This was before he was really on social media.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'd send him a question before I went to bed, and I'd wake up in the morning and have answers from him. I got to have, you know, a 2-year email conversation with Dr. Huang in the process of doing that.
Yeah.
And not to mention my editor. So that adds something that you otherwise wouldn't get from the technology. I'm not poo-pooing the technology. I love the technology.
I hear you, yeah.
And I like using for what it's really good for, and grateful for the tools. I love tech.
Yeah.
I did tech before I got into Chinese medicine.
I know you did, yeah.
You know, I still like to use whatever is a really helpful tool, but I think one of the helpful tools is handmade. When you hand make something.
Yeah.
Which is what you've done with this. I want to ask you a question. I know we got to roll this up here in just a few minutes because I got to get to clinic and you probably do as well. Dr. Huang, right? Shang Han Lun dude. He's got his own particular view, which is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Dr. Liu Du-Zhou, Dr. Liu, has a different view of the Shang Han Lun. Tell me a bit about how those two influences play in your own mind, or maybe you could even just start with Dr. Huang's thoughts about Liu Du-Zhou and how that's influenced his work.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, I was also lucky enough to have Professor Huang write a foreword for this text as well, because I still make...
Dude, I want to get a copy of your book just to read the forewords.
Your copy is in the mail, Michael. Your copy should be there any moment now. I was kind of hoping you would get there before our little chat today, but it's on its way. And so Dr. Huang revered Liu Du-Zhou, of course. I mean, you can't be a Shang Han scholar and not revere Liu Du-Zhou. It just doesn't work that way, right? So in terms of, you know, I've been studying with Dr. Huang for many, many years. And so, of course, my viewpoint, my perspective, my clinical focus has been very influenced by Professor Huang and his style of diagnosis and his emphasis on formula presentations and constitutions and all of these various factors, and his focus on abdominal diagnosis and pulse diagnosis. The one thing about Professor Huang, which I think differs from Liu Du-Zhou, is that Dr. Huang does not get too deep into the theory, into theoretical discussions. Now, that's not saying he doesn't understand the theory, because he really understands the theory, but he doesn't discuss it in clinic. He won't talk about qi transformation. He won't talk about ben biao zhong. He won't talk about opening, closing pivot. He won't talk about these various things. And I mean, he has studied them very deep, but for him, he describes himself as a battlefield physician. You know, he's on the battlefield. He doesn't have time to kind of wax poetic. And his objective is that he wants to make Jingfang for the people, right? And so he wants not just physicians to read his books. He wants lay people to read his books, because he truly believes in his heart that Jingfang can save the world, you know, that it can cure the masses and that it can help the masses. And he doesn't want it to be exclusive. He wants it to be inclusive, and he wants this medicine to be available to everybody. And so he thinks that by also getting too deep into theoretical discussions, it's going to push some people away, and it's going to make it far too exclusive, And so for him, he won't go into that. Whereas Liu Du-Zhou wrote a lot about theory. I mean, theoretical discussions was his jam, And so he was as much a scholar as he was a physician. And so it was an important aspect for him, right? To really emphasize that. And, it's interesting because whether it's Huang or Liu Du-Zhou or Hu Xishu or Feng Shelun or Chen Yiren or any of the, hundreds and thousands of physicians who practice Jingfang and who are really skilled at this art, take different roads to get to their destination, but a lot of them end up with the actual same formula or they end up at the same place. They just took a different road to get there. Some more scenic than others, some far more complicated than others, and some just direct right to it, And I feel that Dr. Huang is kind of a direct, boom, get right to it. It's like, what's in front of me? What do I feel? What do I see? Here, this is what the presentation is, and this is what the formula is. And for him, also having been influenced so much by the Kampo tradition, by this ancient scholars for kind of school of thought from Japan, and also Todo Yoshimatsu, he was also very much like not too concerned with talking about theory all day, and it was just more about like, let's get the job done. Let's get right in there. And I respect that because I'm a clinician too, and I need to help my patients, and my patients don't want to hear about chi transformation. They want to know, can you help me? Can you get rid of this problem? And I don't have the time to, I don't spend hours with each patient. It's pretty quick turnover, right? So we want to get in there. We want to see what we can do and treat accordingly. But, this is my very long-winded answer to your simple question. I read all this material because I still love the theory and I still want to understand it. And that's just the way my brain works. I need to understand something before I can just use it and apply it. And to me, reading the Neijing and reading the theoretical foundations that underpin this entire medicine are just beautiful. It's like reading poetry. I mean, I love poetry, and I love to read this stuff, and I still find it beautiful after all these years. So
yeah, apparently not such a simple question after all.
I'm just a complicated answerer. So
I don't think so, because I think both of these things are true, Eran.
Right.
On one hand, we're practitioners, we're busy, we're looking for the main signs and symptoms that'll help us to help people. And that's important and it's useful, especially when you're like in it, you're in clinic, you got another person, you got to keep on it. There's a place for that. I think it's very helpful in the same way that maybe translating books is helpful, that you know the theory, you know how people have thought about it, you know how they think about their work, you know about chi transformation. There's all, I'm going to call it the source code.
Yeah.
That's underneath the beautiful user interface that can be click, click. Oh, look at that great interface. Click, click, click. It's just like that. But there's an underlying complexity that if you understand it, then you can do that clinical, air quotes, battlefield, like Wang was saying.
That's right, yeah.
Because you've got something underneath that informs it, right? You know that a certain herb is going to work because it's a Yangming herb. It's going to help this Tai-Yin condition.
That's right.
But if you don't know the chi transformation theory, you don't have access to that. You're just like, oh yeah, baijiu for dampness.
That's right, yeah.
It's parching.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, well and good, but like how and why and what?
Where does that come from?
Well, it's a Yangming herb, damn it.
Yeah.
Oh, now I see. Okay, now I can use it in all kinds of other places too, because I know it's a Yangming herb.
Exactly. Well said, yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Where can people get this book?
Right now, it's available on Amazon. Unfortunately, we went to the machine and.
What do you mean? Unfortunately, Amazon's great.
It really is.
You go online, you buy it, they deliver it to your house. It's like the mafia.
I say that for the people who have messaged me and been like, oh my gosh, you guys are selling on Amazon. But I'll tell you, I mean, from my understanding, Amazon started off as a publishing company, and they're doing a beautiful job. I can't deny it. I mean, in terms of, we self-published this book, right? So we started our own publishing house. And so, the plan is to publish numerous books. We've got another one coming out at the end of this year as well. And so we wanted to find a way to publish these books in a very clean, very direct we wanted top quality, right? And I spend a lot of time looking at other publishing houses and looking at ways to do this, but it also makes it very difficult for practitioners who are in Europe, who are in Australia and whatnot, because the shipping would just be outrageous. And so Amazon, with this ability to print on demand now, I mean, it's beautiful. You can order a book on Amazon. There's already numerous people that have received copies of the book who ordered it less than 24 hours previously, and they get this printed, beautifully designed book. So, we couldn't really deny that, right? So they've been outstanding so far.
Print on demand.
Yeah.
Is wonderful. You don't have warehouses.
Exactly.
You don't have all kinds of extra fuel costs of having to move things around or store it.
Exactly.
It's print it as you need it. I mean, it's actually very green technology when you think about it.
100% agree. 100% agree. I think it's absolutely brilliant because, like you said, I mean, I don't have to print 500 copies and have them sit in my house because maybe 10 will sell. I don't know how many are going to sell. So, and like very, very green way of doing things because it's only what is needed is going to be printed and shipped. It's pretty clever. So the book is available on Amazon in pretty much most marketplaces around the world. I do want to also mention that the text is a bilingual edition. So I left all the original Chinese in there. And the purpose of doing that was because I know that there are a lot of people that are learning Chinese or studying Chinese and they want to see that. And I also want to be held accountable for my own translation work. I want, if there's an error, if somebody sees a problem there, then let me know, so I'm all cards are put on the table. I didn't want to release a book that I wanted people to see why I chose the terms I did. And so it's a bilingual edition. Yeah, absolutely.
Showing your work.
Open source, showing my work. Exactly. Yeah.
Showing your work. Open source. Fantastic. Okay. I'll be watching my mail.
Yes, it's coming.
Can't wait. It's going to be fun. Eran, thank you. It's always great to hang out, and I'm especially...
It's the best.
Man, I can't wait. Water and Fire.
Yeah, you're going to love it. Yeah, you're going to love it.
Yeah. Okay. We'll talk more about it later.
Thank you, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Always fun. Till next time. Dr. Liu lived through interesting times. Born just 5 years after the fall of the Qing dynasty, through apprenticeship, he learned his medicine from Republican-era doctors. He lived through the communists coming to power, the institutionalization of TCM, the Cultural Revolution, and the economic reforms of Deng Xiaoping. He saw a lot of change and, through it all, was steadfast in his learning and practice of medicine. As Eran and I discussed, Liu Du-Zhou was influential when it came to the Shang Han Lun. While Dr. Liu is well known in China only recently, and especially with the publishing of Eran's book, his work is making its way into our English-speaking world. Liu Du-Zhou certainly put to rest any misconception that the Shang Han Lun is only about treating infectious disease. In particular, his thoughts on qi transformation will not only help you better understand the workings of the 6 conformations, it will help you better understand the dynamics of properly functioning physiology. And even if you're not an herbalist and you only practice acupuncture, Liu Du-Zhou's perspective on qi transformation through the 6 conformations, it'll deepen your understanding of how to help the body return to a more coherent state of functioning using the dynamics of proper physiology. If it sounds like I'm excited to have Dr. Liu's work in English, it's because I am. Hey, if you enjoyed this conversation and you'd like to hear more on the Shang Han Lun, we have a few conversations in the library. Number 36, Power of the Matrix, Clinical Applications of the Jingfang Tradition of Dr. Hu Shishu And Feng Lun, that one is with Francis Turner. We have episode 300, Clinician's Guide to the Shang Han Lun with Dr. Shouchun Ma and Dan Bensky. And then there's episode 327, An Acupuncturist Perspective on the Shang Han Lun with Maya Suzuki. There's a lot more in our back catalog, so do check it out. And when you find something that lights you up and you think it's helpful, be sure to share it with a friend. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.